Hi, and welcome to the Route to CISO podcast. It's me, Chris Rides. I'm going to be your host, and I'm going to be chatting to seasoned Chief Information Security Officers about their career journeys. We're going to be unencrypting their real-life stories and searching for the hidden keys to help you fast-track your cybersecurity career. Welcome to Season 2 of the Route to CISO podcast. With me today, I've got Andrew Wilder. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, you're more than welcome. This is 2 years. I think 2 years ago, I asked you about this, and then we talked about it, and then now here we are, right?
That's right. 2 years and 3 reschedules later, we got it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, this is the industry we work in. Things come up, right? So I'm glad that we could fit it in, and it's a big chunk of time. So I do really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Good stuff. Well, look, let's start with you sort of, I guess, giving everybody an idea of what you're up to currently. That's probably a good place. And then we'll jump into your background in a second after that.
Sounds good. So right now I am the Chief Security Officer at VetCor. VetCor is a veterinary consolidation company. We own about 900 veterinary hospitals in North America. I'm their first CISO that they've ever had, and building a small team there and doing a few things like identity and operations and stuff like that, and a little bit of physical security too. In terms of extracurriculars, if you will, I'm an adjunct professor of cyber at Washington University. Washington University, by the way, is in St. Louis. It's not in Washington State or in Washington, D.C., so clarify that regularly. I am on a couple of different nonprofit boards, so the local FBI InfraGard chapter. We run actually a conference every year called the State of Cyber. We have about 350 participants and 15 to 20 vendor sponsors, and all the speakers are Secret Service and FBI and those folks who are working on cybersecurity, so really cool stuff. And the other one is a group called Cyber Up, and I'm really passionate about Cyber Up. Cyber Up is a group that gives people free training in cybersecurity and then places them as apprentices at different companies. And actually last week, we're recording this on February 20th, but last week I was voted as the president of the board of Cyber Up. So I'm really excited to see how that works, and hope I can help. Very humbled by that, but that's great. And then besides those things, I'm also an angel investor and advisor in about 20 different cybersecurity startups, which is not uncommon for people in this role, but that's a lot of fun. I'm really passionate about that too, and I've seen some companies really grow and make amazing things and great products that benefit the entire ecosystem. So that's me and what I'm currently doing in a nutshell.
And it completely explains why it takes 2 years to try and get us together to do this, right?
Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Well, I love that. Well, at some point we'll have to talk about the Cyber Up, because that links into a few pilot projects and things that I've been doing and speaking to the previous administration at the White House on.
Absolutely.
So there's some interesting stuff there and a lot of opportunity, and what you're talking about is something that I'd seen done in the UK. Yeah. Oh my goodness, 20 years ago, very, very successfully. So I love that. Actually, we could go completely off topic, but I think a lot of the boot camps and a lot of the stuff that they're training and just pushing these people out with no end goal, right? Without that job. So that's a whole nother podcast though.
Absolutely. But I mean, it's what you're saying is absolutely right, because if you try and break into the industry with purely like education and certifications, they're going to say, hey, you don't have any experience. So once you give someone that education and that certification, then you place them as an apprentice for 6 months, a year, whatever, then you've got experience, and you can't deny that. And so it gives them a much greater opportunity to try to break into the industry than people with education or certs alone.
Yeah, I think that mixture of the two is so helpful. It's funny actually. So I'm on the advisory board for UNLV, as long as a few other education related ones as well. Yeah. But UNLV here, they have a grant. I think it's the Step Up Startup Program, and it's funded by the governor's office, or it was the last few years. The grants run out, so they're reapplying for it. So hopefully they get it. But it basically allows them to take the people that are coming out of their cyber programs and IT programs, and they can go and work for small businesses and startups. and the grant covers the pay and stuff. It's an amazing program. It's been
Yeah.
really successful at opening up opportunities for those sort of things for companies that probably couldn't afford to do it, or but have the bandwidth and give great experience to these people that are coming
Yeah.
out with degrees.
It's a win-win-win because the people who are doing it win, the companies that do it win, and the government wins because now you're creating more viable, employable people who are going to pay taxes in the future. So it's a whole ecosystem that's kind of boosting itself.
Yeah, totally. I'd love to see it done. And it's funny. I told when I was meeting at the White House, I told them about the program because they'd never heard of it because it's a local Nevada thing,
Yeah.
and they were like, "That sounds amazing." So I mean, I'm not sure how the current administration they're not looking. They're looking like they want to cut back funding rather than put more
Seems that
funding.
they do.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe if it's in the right places with the right outcomes,
Yeah.
you know, we will see. But again, whole nother podcast. I'll also at some point I'd love to get the details of the InfraGard conference because I'm a member here
Yeah.
and I've only been to a few of their meetings, but one of them was an amazing one with the guy that basically was sent out to interview, but basically question Saddam Hussein.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was one of the most amazing speakers I've ever seen, and the actual talk was just unbelievable. It was like an hour of the time just went like this, and
Yeah.
brilliant. Somebody who'd probably be good for the conference if
Yeah,
haven't had
no,
him
we'd
on
love to
before.
have some, ideas for more speakers. Last year, the number one session was a guy that talked about pig butchering and the whole work around that. And he showed photos of inside the almost looks like a prison where they're forcing people, people who they have kidnapped from other countries to do this thing. And you see this photograph of a desk that's covered in phones, and all of these phones are on different like WhatsApp and different messaging conversations, trying to convince people that they're in love with them and that they're going to help them, get money through this crypto scam thing. And it's unbelievable how well organized it is, and it's like a multi-billion-dollar business of scamming people out of their money.
That
It's great.
sounds like an amazing talk. So okay, well that'll be another thing. We'll have to when we release this, we'll have to drop the link to the conference as well because I'm sure there'll be a bunch of people on here that will be interested in that as well.
Yeah.
We should probably talk about your career, seeing as
Ah,
that was the
yes.
plan,
Okay, that's
really.
true. We do got to get to that. Okay.
So a good place to start would probably be to just, I mean, what was your foundation? Like, did you go to college, and then what was your first job? Let's go right the way back to the beginning.
Yep. So I'm going to apologize to any of your listeners who have listened to me on any podcast before because they've probably heard this story. But if you haven't, you're in for it. So here you go. So Chris, have you ever seen that television show called The Office?
Yeah, well, I mean, it came out of the UK, right?
I
So it was
know, yeah.
originally
UK
one
UK
of my
version,
favorite
or
shows.
yeah, preferably the American version because that's where our story really starts. So,
Yep,
one of the first jobs that I had out of school was working at a paper company, not unlike Dunder Mifflin.
right.
And we had the office staff and the warehouse staff. And because it was a small company, my job title was customer service. But because it was a small company, I did inventory, I did finance, I did marketing and sales. And when we get busy, I'd go out in the warehouse and drive the forklift and pick pallets and put them on the truck. So I knew that whole business from beginning to end. And one day, the owner of the company comes to me and he says, "Hey, Andrew," he says, "we're going to replace our old mainframe computer systems with Windows servers and Windows workstations." And I said, that sounds great. Let's do that. And he said, "Guess what? You're the youngest guy, so you get to work on this project." I said, "Okay." So at the time, there weren't like really data conversion tools or anything like that. There was no way to do this in a technical way. So every nights and weekends for like probably 2 or 3 months, I was in there just doing all the data conversion by hand. And one day we go live with this new program and things are breaking and I'm fixing them on the fly. And I had so much satisfaction in my very young career. And I had this kind of moment of clarity, and I thought, you know what? I should probably do this IT thing as a career. So I saved up some vacation time, I saved up some money, and I went to Chicago for 2 weeks in the dead of winter. And this is I'm coming from San Diego, which is where I'm from. And at the time there was a thing called an MCSE. Now I'm dating myself a little bit by telling you that that's what it was, but the MCSE required that you pass 7 different exams. So I go to this boot camp, and over 2 weeks they kind of coach you through, and you take all 7 exams. So I go home, and 2 weeks I passed all 7 exams. I go home, I'm an MCSE certified. So then I put my resume out all over the country, and I got picked up by Hewlett Packard, or HP, which is now I don't know, DTX or something like that, DXC.
Yeah.
But it was in Atlanta, Georgia. So I sold my house, I moved my whole family across the country, and I start doing this cybersecurity program for Bank of America through HP. And again, I'm the youngest guy, and I'm a PM for this project, and I've got like a team of 15 guys. All of them are older than me. All of them are more experienced than me. I've done one project once, and I have the MCSE cert. That's all I got. But I really I really became like a servant leader for them, and I just did everything I could to try to help them and make them look good. And we did really well, and it was a lot of fun. About 40,000, 50,000 people in the Atlanta metro area who work for Bank of America, and we did all these kind of vuln management programs and replacements and all that stuff. And then HP talked about another role that they had, which was back in California, and I wanted to get back home. So this was with Nestle,
Yeah.
and so I took that role. And also at the same time, they said, "Do you want to do this other role for DHL that's based in Washington D.C.?" So I moved to DC for like 6 months. I was doing 2 jobs at the same time, which was very lucrative and good, but a little tiring. And at the end of that whole cycle of the consulting through HP, I actually got job offers from all 3 companies. And so I was in a great position where I'm like, which one do I want to go with?
Yeah.
And I decided on Nestle because I really love their culture.
Yeah.
Um,
I thought you were going to say you love their chocolate or their coffee for a second there.
well, I do like not the American chocolate, which they sold, but I love both of those things too.
Yeah, I grew
So
up. It's funny you say that because I grew up. The coffee roasting plant, it was in my hometown, and so I'd grow up to the smell of coffee being roasted. So yeah, very
nice.
close to the Nestle plant.
Yeah, it's a good thing. So the culture at Nestle, especially at the time when I joined, it was very much we're all in it together. So they had a cybersecurity team, and they asked me, "Hey, would you manage our cybersecurity team for their largest business unit?" Which I said yes, of course. And what happened at Nestle is every 2 or 3 years they just give me more scope, more team, more budget, more responsibility. When I left Nestle after 18 years, I was the regional CISO of Americas, Asia, and Europe. I had a team all over the world. I didn't really sleep very much.
Right.
I was on 5 different leadership teams, but boy, it taught me a ton. And there was an old saying that a CFO that I had used to say. She would say, "We need people who know what good looks like." And I would say, I know what good looks like. Like I've been on a world-class cybersecurity team with like 300 people that's global and really doing stuff for a big, 300,000 company and 85 billion in sales. Like I know how to manage that stuff. So since then, I've been a CISO 3 times. The first was with Hillenbrand, which is a global manufacturing company.
Yeah.
They're about, a tenth the size of Nestle, maybe. But it was a good role to be my first CISO role. And then the last 2, or the one that I currently have and previous, were both in the veterinary industry. So last one was with Community Veterinary Partners, which is a vet consolidator, and then now with VetCore, which is a kind of a 5 or 6 times larger vet consolidator as well. So that's my story. I'm open to questions.
I love that. That's well, I want to go back first of all and talk about you sort of getting that, like getting the hands-on tech experience, I guess.
Mhm.
So did you go to school for anything like that? Did you go to college? I mean, I personally didn't go to college, so I
Yeah.
like,
So I went to school for computer science, but
okay.
I didn't finish.
Yeah.
I was I was young, I had a child, I had a full-time job. I didn't really, I couldn't do all of those things.
Yeah.
So I realized one of those has to give. And that's why I did the MCSE route, which at the time was almost better than having a degree in something, because that's really what people were looking for. And at the time, most people who had that MCSE cert at that time had 5 or 10 years of experience doing IT stuff. I mean, I had like a few months, but it worked out very well.
Yeah, I remember those times. So when I first got into recruitment, so that's 25 years ago now. People wanted the CNE, if you remember those,
Hmm.
the
Yeah, of
certified
course. Yep.
Novell engineer,
Yep.
and the MCSE was very high. And part of one of the first programs that I saw that was taking people and guaranteeing them a job at the end of it was a program that we would take veterans in the UK, put them through an MCSE course, and some of them had IT background, some of them didn't, and they would be guaranteed an IT job at the end of it. We had, if you remember CSC, which I think, I'm not sure who they're owned by, they might be part of Accenture now, but
Uh-huh.
CSC, Computer Science Corporation, they would take them on, and at one point there was over 300 of them all contracting, so they would guarantee
Yeah.
them a contract at the end for 6 months, and then at the end of that they would extend most of them or take them on permanently if they had the headcount. So yeah, the MCSE was in such high demand then that we knew that if we brought somebody in and we found somebody that was looking that had one, we were going to place them somewhere. It was great
Yeah.
times.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's amazing. So like, because I think there's a lot of people that will be watching this that maybe don't didn't have a degree, don't have a degree, or their degree isn't in computer science, but they're interested in it. Was there anything particularly that you did back then that got them to say, right, you're the person to give this project to, or because I think there's a lot of things people can do within their companies that they work for now, not
Yeah.
in IT, to get into IT or get into cyber.
Yeah, I think it's really just about aptitude. Like when I hire people today, I'm not necessarily looking for people who have the experience in a specific area. I'm really hiring for soft skills, right? There's some things that are intrinsic. Like, are you someone that's going to show up, that's going to work hard, that's going to learn things quickly? Those are things that I need. And I've hired people from, project backgrounds, we hired somebody who was an administrative assistant. We hired people who are in the developer side, like in programmers, and taught them cybersecurity. And some of those people ended up being the best cybersecurity people that we had. So I think it's really about aptitude and trying to get in there and learn the stuff that you want to do. Certainly, you can see people get into IT by being like the champion of a certain software or program for their group, and then you're kind of the super user, and then you can say, "Hey, I can support this on a larger level," and that kind of opens the door to IT too. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can do it. I'm not saying that anybody should follow my way. Don't be a customer service at Dunder Mifflin in San Diego. But whatever it is that's your desire, go out there and find a way to get into it.
Well, I think that's the key. Like, there are a lot of people that are out there that are working in paper companies or in companies where you wouldn't necessarily think technology, and there are great opportunities to do it. But my very first role, I was working in, well, I worked in as a travel agent. Then I worked in conference sales for part of the same company, and then they decided to put an internet cafe in the conference rooms in the
Hmm.
area, and they had an IT manager, and he was like, I'm going to need a hand with this. So I said, I'm interested in computers. I'd love to give you a hand. And
Yeah.
that got my interest. I ended up in really a tech sales role rather than a tech role, but still that knowledge really helped me. And I think that's what you talked about, that putting your hand up and the willingness to go and work weekends and evenings, because you probably were doing your other job at the same time, right?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And so that willingness to do that counts for an awful lot, and you're more likely to get a role internally than you are sort of externally with no experience, right?
Yeah. I was going to kind of save this piece of advice for the end of the show, but One thing someone told me fairly early in my career was, no one is going to care more about your career than you do.
Hmm.
So don't expect your manager to do it. Don't expect HR to do it. Don't expect anyone else to do it. It's up to you to go out there and get what it is that you want. So if you're in a field and you want to be more into technology, go and learn whatever technology is applicable to your field. Go and learn digital marketing on your own and then come back and show your boss or your team, like, here's how we can do it with this new tool. And especially today, all of those opportunities to learn anything you want are out there all for free, right? Like Harvard and
Yep.
Yale and Stanford, they're all offering courses that they have that you'd have to pay tens of thousands of dollars to attend. They're offering those online for free. So anybody can learn anything. That's not an excuse anymore. And it doesn't cost anything. It just is your time and how you allocate your time and value those learnings. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. If it's important to you, then you find the time to get it done. Yeah, that's great advice. So they're going early with the advice. Let's hope we've got some more good stuff for part two.
I promise I've got some more stuff for part two. I'll stop going. I'll stop reading ahead.
That's all good. So so then you were there as sort of an individual contributor.
Yeah.
At what point? Because it sounded like you were then a program manager and you had people. You obviously were
Yeah.
working as that. You were working with people, but were you leading them? Were they reporting into you, or more
So
leading them
yeah,
as a
the
project?
the role, the first role that I had with HP through Bank of America, they did not report to me, but I was the
Right.
project manager, so they were all working on the project. So project manager is kind of a dotted line reporting role anyway. And I'm kind of glad that they weren't reporting to me at that point because they resented me to begin with. They would have resented me even more.
Yeah.
But as soon as I started the project with Nestle, there was a senior PM and I was the junior PM, and then all of the people really actually worked for us. So they were contractors. And after, I think it was about 3 months, the senior PM quit. And when he quit, I had one of the best negotiating points of my career
Yeah.
because he was a good friend of mine. And as he was leaving, he told me what he was getting paid. And so they said, hey, so and so left. We're going to make you the senior PM on the project, and we're going to pay you this much. And I said, guys, I need this much, and you need me more than I need you because I've been on the project for 3 months. I know everything. I know how much you were paying the guy that just left.
Yeah.
Like, you're really going to have to give it to me. And they're, oh, let me go check with the boss. And they came back 5 minutes later and said, yeah, you can have that much. So it was the best negotiating,
Right.
at least intelligence information that I
Right.
ever had because I knew everything going into it. So it worked out pretty well.
Like with that, what's a little bit surprising, but well, what I should say is not a little bit surprising, but maybe to some people is that they don't think that people talk about their salaries, right? There's a whole thought process
Yeah.
amongst whether it's like HR or whatever, you're not allowed to, or it's in the contract, or it's not in your people talk about salaries, right? Most people know what other people are on or have a fair idea. And so, you should probably go in with that thought process in mind, especially when they can afford to pay it, right?
Yep. Or when someone's on the way out and has nothing to lose by telling other people what their salary is, right? I mean,
Yeah.
why would you not do that at that point?
Well, no, it's another shout out for why you want to keep close and why it's important to have good relationships with everybody you work with, right? Because even when they move on, they're still useful. Like, they're still people that can really be helpful to you, and you hopefully can be helpful to them. So that's an
Absolutely.
important key. So what was the first time you moved, and it sounds like that is it, but moved from that individual contributor into a leadership role? Because that's something that we speak about on here, because it's one of those tough times where a lot of people, sorry, really struggle with making that move.
Yeah. So yeah, the Bank of America role was a project manager. So again, kind of dotted line leadership, and then the Nestle contract role after the senior guy left, that was direct leadership. But it's not like direct leadership in a company, right? Because we're all kind of contractors. So the first time I was a direct leader and within a company was when I took the job for Nestle. And at the time, pre 2012, cybersecurity was a cost center. It wasn't in the news. You weren't reading about breaches. Everybody didn't
Yeah.
get hacked all the time. Phishing wasn't very prevalent. It was all kind of just IT mumbo jumbo. And somewhere around 2012, like the script flipped. So instead of me going to every CIO in Nestle and saying, please, please do cybersecurity, it's them coming to me and saying, hey, my CFO said we really need to take this thing seriously. What do I need to do to get cyber secure? So it was amazing for us. And then of course we got a lot more funding and we built larger teams and we had more resources to be able to do the things that we needed to do to protect stuff, which we wanted to do before, but it just was kind of an afterthought before. So
It's um it's funny because I started Tyro Security in 2012, and
hmm
when I initially was sort of planning it, like my parents were like, "What's cybersecurity?" and my friends were like, "What is that?" And then that felt like within a year of starting it, it was on the news and everybody
yep,
knew what it was. And I'm trying to guess. I was trying to think when the Target hack must have been 2013, maybe. I don't
yeah,
know. That was
something like that.
really publicized. We had a few really big publicized ones that then my mum and dad were like, "Oh, that's what our son does," sort of thing, you know. But
It's
like we
new
started
now.
talking about it. It was newsworthy, and I think that helped with a lot of the careers because prior to that, I knew it was really a specialized area of recruitment because my business partner that I started the company with, his background was pen testing. So I'd known him for years and years. He'd started off two security companies. The first one was a testing company, and then he'd sold those. And so I probably knew a little bit more about doing the tech recruitment for 10 years before that, and then his thing. But nowadays, everybody knows about it, right?
Absolutely. It's just a common phrase now.
Yeah, so good. So you moved to Nestle and you were there. Well, actually, before we jump onto Nestle, I do have
Yeah.
just a question. I speak to a lot of people that have worked for like consulting companies. Like you mentioned, it was
Yeah.
HP for you. Um, I feel like they come out. They work very hard, but I feel like they come out with really well-rounded, broad experience, good in front of customers. It seems like
Yeah.
a really, if people have the opportunity and it fits with their life and what they're able to do, it feels like a really great opportunity. What was your experience of that for those few years before Nestle?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with your synopsis. It so by being someone who is thrown into different problems all the time, you become an amazing problem solver. And you also talked about good in front of customers. So you also develop this kind of customer service mindset. So when you take a good problem solver with a good customer service mindset and you put them into a leadership role within a regular company, they're really this amazing person who's a partner, they're a networker, they're a problem solver, and so it really sets up people well. When I give people advice who are getting into the industry about what types of roles to go after, the first advice that I give people is to go for a role in the government. And,
Hmm.
and the reason is it gets you very well rounded. You understand a lot of kind of bureaucracy and stuff that'll help you in the future. And the pay in government is usually pretty low. So when you're first starting out in your career, you can handle that because you don't know what the pay that you'll eventually get is, and so it doesn't really bother you. So
Yeah.
do a year, do 2 years or something like that in the government. That'll give you a really good background. The second thing that I recommend is, Big Four consulting. Go and do that because that will give you all of that experience. And like you said, you have to be ready for it. It's going to be a lot of travel. You're going to work, 14, 16-hour days. That's pretty normal at that point. But do it when you start out in your career. Develop that really good understanding, their good problem solving skills, customer service, and then when you go, get a job at another company, you'll have all of that stuff behind you and you'll kind of know that. When I would hire people at Nestle, I would always tell them, find me someone who's coming out of one of those consulting companies and I'll interview those people first.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. We get those kind of demands, and it's actually quite a nice pool of people because at some point you get tired of the travel,
Yeah.
right? And you want to
Yep.
be in one space at one time, and the excitement of being on this project, being on that project, or multiple projects at once kind of starts to wear a bit thin. Maybe life changes, and stuff.
Yep.
And so it is a it's great to bring people out of there, and they've always done very well at whatever companies they go to. They hit the ground running, right? Because they're used to being thrown into that sort of stuff.
Yep. That's another intrinsic that you hire for, is someone that you can throw at a problem and say, go solve this problem, and they'll hit the ground running on that problem, right? Because if you have to give all kinds of coaching and guidance to somebody, then what I'm not saying what's the point, but then I really have hired someone who's junior for a role, and I've got to kind of coach them and build them up, right? So you're looking for someone with experience you can just throw at something and you not have to worry that that thing's going to get done.
Yeah, yeah, it's that, like, they don't have to have experience of the specific thing, and that's what you were saying about when you hire. It's that ability to pick something up,
Yeah.
get an understanding of it really quick, and then go and work out, right, what do I need to do? And if part of that is also knowing when to put your hand up and say to somebody, I'm stuck on this part, can we sort of have a talk through it? As
Yeah.
well as knowing, right, this is what I can do on my own, right? You've already done everything else before you put your hand up.
Exactly.
So good. So let's let's jump into just like your Nestle. You then moved on to Nestle.
Yeah.
What was because you were there for a long time, so you've been somebody that's moved around, done lots of projects, and then you're there for a long time, which is really an interesting thing, because most people assume that you're either somebody that moves a lot or you're somebody that
Mhm.
stays somewhere a long time, and that's not actually true for most people.
Yeah. Yeah. So the beginning, I was managing the Nestle USA cybersecurity team,
Hmm.
and while I was at Nestle, I think we did 8 different IT reorgs. So any big multinational company with more than 300,000 people, this is a normal thing that you do from time to time, right? Because you
Yeah.
have all these different business units, you have similar functions, you reorg so you get some kind of value out of it. You don't need all the middle management layer. It works out pretty well. So one of the first ones that we did is we merged the Nestle Purina cybersecurity team and the Nestle US cybersecurity team into one kind of North America team. And that there was some transitions that went through that. I actually went through into a project manager role for I think about 2 years during that time. And what I did, I have a lot of experience in identity management. So what I did at the time is I did our first automated identity management. So tying in with the SAP HR system to
Yeah.
automate movers, leavers, changers with all the different markets in the Americas. So that was a big project, a lot of fun, a lot of traveling around. Kind of felt like a consultant again, but I had I had a good experience for it. And then we started more of these kind of reorgs. So we reorged all of North America IT, and then we reorged Latin America IT. And so at that point, other people were moving around and stuff, and they're like, okay, now we need you to manage cybersecurity for the whole zone. Nestle has the zones of Americas, Europe, and Asia. And I said, okay.
Right.
So I started doing that, and then again, people moved around. And then my boss said, hey, you can be the regional head of security for the zone, but you have to move to St. Louis. I said, okay. So I did that, moved to St. Louis. And then there was a guy who was regional head for Asia, Americas, and Europe, like all three together. And then he retired. And so then they said, okay, well, you can have that guy's job too. But that was when, Monday mornings and Friday afternoons were okay, but don't talk to me Tuesday through Thursday from like 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. because I'm slammed. And it's, again, so much fun, amazing people, great opportunity to learn and travel. But yeah, after a while you get tired. I guess it's a lot to
Yeah.
do.
Well, working across all those time zones, that's just insane. And I think anybody I speak to that's on that kind of global scale, like, there's no getting around it, really, right?
Yeah,
You're the
yeah,
person that, if they need to speak to you, and it's whatever time at that day that they have to speak to you, then, right? And your phone is on, so
yeah.
it's a
One
that's
thing
a
that makes
tough
me
one.
feel a little bit good is after I left, they hired 3 people to do the role that I had. So I feel a little bit better that they realized that it needed more than one person to manage.
That's good. Yeah, it's a shame they probably didn't realize that a bit earlier and give you a bit more support,
Uh,
maybe.
yeah,
But
it's okay. I don't live in regret. I'm very happy with the way that things turned out, and they really supported me in the transition to the new role. When I was in that last role at Nestle, my boss was really a cool guy, and he said, "Look, your next job is my job. I'm not going anywhere. Let's help you to find your next position." And he did, and I did, and it worked out really well. And here we are now. It's history.
That's amazing. Well, look, I think this is a great point to end part one of our discussion.
Okay.
Because then we'll come back there, because I definitely want to hear the story of how you got that sort of next position, and it sounds like you were mentored or assisted by the people you were working with, that's a fascinating thing that I think a lot of people don't realize does happen in our industry. So let's call this end of part one. Thank you for your time.
And thank you, part one. Sad to see you go, but it was great.
And everybody else, they'll all have to wait a week for this next part, whereas we're just going to stop recording and then restart it. So it's great. But well, thank you everybody for joining us for part one of our Route to CISO conversation with Andrew Wilder. You won't see us for another week. We will stop recording, and then we'll start it again and see each other again in 2 seconds. So thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Route to CISO podcast. If there's something you really want me to ask on the next episode, or if you're a CISO who wants to inspire the next generation, please reach out. I'll leave a URL to my LinkedIn profile, and make sure you connect and message me there. We're always looking for feedback, so please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.